Okay, looks like we're live now. Perfect, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first official live broadcast here at the Latitudes de Latinidad Summer Academic Seminar Facebook page. And today we have a very wonderful opportunity to reflect on the work that has transpired over the last year following our participation and attendance over to Casa de las Americas and to its fifth international colloquium headed out of one of its programs, the program being the Program for the Study of Latinos and Latinas in the United States. But before we get into the stuff of our reflections and such, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce the folks just very briefly to you, the folks that are joining us this morning, and then I'll follow it up with a very short introduction about Casa de las Americas, the Program for the Study of Latinas and Latinos in the United States, and then we'll get into our conversation, okay? So joining us this morning here in the city of LA is Iris de Anda, a local poet and artist extraordinaire, musician, I understand as well. And then, of course, is Viva Padilla, another wonderful poet, local contributor to the art scene, and of course, now on account of our participation in La Habana, Cuba, is certainly recognized internationally, as is everyone else that's on our panel this morning. Following this introduction, of course, is Mr. Matt Sedillo, poet, Lord of the Struggle. Poet, Lord of the Struggle, has recently published a book of poetry, and he'll tell us a little bit about it, of course. The name of the book is Mowing Leaves of Grass. We're very fortunate and lucky to be here with him as well. And then finally, of course, a very wonderful opportunity for us to be in conversation with Mr. Luis Rodriguez, officially recognized poet laureate of the city of LA. Was actually also at one point a candidate for the governorship in the state of California. Mr. Luis Rodriguez is well known for his work in various areas of Chicana and Chicano literature, as far as memoirs go, poetry, is the owner and director, if I mentioning correctly, one of the directors and one of the owners of Tia Chucha's coffee and bookshop. And of course, we all know Luis Rodriguez because of a book he published almost some 30 years ago, a book called Always Running. Anyway, before we get into conversation with folks here, just know that what we're going to be talking about is a trip that we took to Casa de las Americas in La Habana, Cuba. Casa de las Americas, of course, is one of the first institutions that was established by the Cuban government following the triumph of the revolution. Its first director was Aide Santa Maria. Casa de las Americas has a number of divisions and programs, one of which is the Program for the Study of Latinas and Latinos in the United States. And it was this particular program, its director, Antonio Aja, and one of its principal associates, Miss Ana Nidia Albo, organized the colloquium that we attended last year. And of course, the colloquium, I'll translate it, was called the Cultural Development and industry of Latinos in the United States and their international spaces. This is a colloquium that was held last year that gathered artists, writers, poets, intellectuals, and academics from the entire continent to address those matters concerning the presence, history, and future of Latina and Latino people in the United States. Special attention, of course, last year was given to matters concerning trans-border issues, certainly with the politics and the economy around the migration of people across the border. And of course, last year we had very close to us the recollection and experience of the migrants walking through Central America and making their way through Mexico, and then stopping and being stopped at the border between the United States and Mexico. Some of them were lucky to make it across. Anyway, that's the context. And so I'd like to turn it over. To folks, and the question is for anyone that'd like to pick it up. The question is, what are your recollections? What was your experience like? And we'll start there. Let's begin with Matt.
Well, my experience in Cuba was, I mean, there's kind of a multiple thing here. That there's kind of multiple answers. Like one answer would be like, just me as a person, what I saw was, I didn't see any homeless people. I didn't see the cops messing anybody up, and it was kind of interesting. Coming back, people would say like, well, the Cuban government's very good at hiding these things. They're very good at hiding these things, and they're very duplicitous, and they don't want Americans to see this and such and such. So, I mean, that's funny on a couple accounts, because one, the presumption that I'm so important, that the Cuban government, needs to hide any bad things going on from me. Also, I might speak out, like as though that's like a real priority of a government. That's kind of silly. And secondly, people say, well, you only saw Havana, you didn't go to the countryside, that's where blah, blah, blah. But like, if you look at anywhere in the world, in any major metropolitan area, that's where the house populations tend to end up. People who are homeless, they tend to end up near those centers. So, I mean, like, where would you hide the homeless? Where, like, if in Los Angeles if they decide to do that, where would they do that? They push them out to the desert or something like that. I mean, like, but that would be just temporary kind of thing, like if the Olympics came or something like that. But essentially, like, that's not something that cities do. You know what I'm saying? So that's where they would congregate. So where are they hiding homeless? They're hiding in homes, Also on a more just kind of subtle kind of thing, you could just see that people were just interacting differently. The stress and tension of everyday life. So, the most obvious things are like, the police or people being, out on the streets, right? Those are the most like obvious, like, okay, this is really bad. This is like, the city is failing people, right? That's the most obvious kind of thing. But on a more subtle level, you could just walk into a restaurant and you couldn't tell who was the manager. You couldn't tell who was in charge. You couldn't tell who was what. I mean, you didn't see people like bossing each other around. You didn't see people walking around with this like stress and unease on their face. So just on a human level, that's what it was like. Then there's the question of like what it was like as, on a professional level, like on like what am I there to be doing, right? So, as a writer, as a poet, to be able to speak at Casa de las Americas was just a huge, huge honor. It was a huge, a huge thing to walk in the footsteps of, other people who presented there, such as, Mercedes Sosa and, Roque Dalton had an office there. And so to just be part of that, walking into that history was just such a deep just honor. There's no other word for it. And then, like, as somebody who's very revolutionary minded, to be in Cuba and to see, what the Cuban Revolution has achieved, and to see what, U.S. imperialism is doing to try and crush it, to see those things simultaneous, was also very, it really lit up my mind to see that, like, you can see the effects of the sanction, but you don't see it, you see the effects of the sanction, but it's like uneven. It's just like an uneven thing. Like there are certain aspects of society that are better because everyone just is coming together and doing things cooperatively, and there's aspects of society that are more difficult because of the effects of the sanction, but they don't show up evenly. They don't show, oh, this is that, this that, or it's across the board. They show up on these like uneven distortions. So it really made me feel like what I need to do as somebody who was, born in the U.S. Is come back and really, really tell people about why we need to get rid of those sanctions and stop strangling the revolution.
Wonderful. Other folks, typically, go ahead.
I can add to that. I agree with Matt about just walking, through the streets as a visitor to the area and just noticing that ease of the people. I think a question that came to me over the year now, because I came back like in love with the place, right? When you travel and you're outside of like your comfort, we're seeing like the bright and like the good things of it. Something though that I was questioning afterward was their monetary system. So I know for us, we were oops. I know the people there use pesos, and I was just wondering, is there a difference? Why, as a tourist, quote unquote, we're given a different monetary system? Is there something to that? So, yeah, just little questions that came up over the year for me versus like when I first came back, just feeling like, que viva Cuba, everything's beautiful. Now there's a little more reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. Viva, I'm going. As it turns out, I'm just gonna go counterclockwise here on my screen. Reflections, just in short, to get us started in the conversation. We can't hear you, Viva. Go ahead. No.
Okay, how about now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, my settings were off. Sorry about that.
No problem.
My experience in Cuba, like Matt was saying, was layered. It was definitely layered. For me, personally speaking, the biggest thing about it was not feeling like I was under attack. Like psychologically speaking, I didn't feel like I was walking around being having all these forces put upon me, like, buy this, consume that, there's a juicy burger here, go buy it, like this is the latest thing, please go get it, go get it. And that was the biggest for me. Like I had that kind of feeling of like, wow, I can think my own thoughts. I'm not busy going around fighting these forces. So that was the biggest thing for me, that I felt like I can walk down the street and just kind of exist and not feel like there's something missing to my existence or something because I don't have the latest thing or I didn't buy this, right? And coming back to the United States, I definitely felt that difference in like, I do go from one thing to another in my life over here. And I don't think that's natural. And, I definitely feel more natural in Cuba. And I really enjoyed that feeling. There were many more other things that I could talk about, but that was the biggest thing for me, just feeling like psychologically, like my psyche wasn't under attack. So, but that's just one thing about it. I don't want to take up too much time to talk about everything else, but that was
we're getting started here. We're getting started here. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Viva. Thank you very much. Luis?
Well, I just want to say the celebration of poetry, the celebration of music, the celebration of people's lives. Cubans can be Cubans. They don't have to assimilate to anything other than who they are. I got that from everywhere we went. There was the old card thing is amazing to me because that reminds me of our barrios. You know, we have that legacy of old cars that we rebuild and build, and vintage cars and bombs and bombas, as we call them. So anyway, I found out to be fascinating that the celebration of life was there, even though it's true what everybody's saying. It's a very poor country. It's a country whose resources have been staffed and sanctioned. Sanctions have helped contribute to it. But I also lived in Little Havana in Miami. By the way, I lived in Miami before, and I can contrast the thing. I think that I loved Little Havana because the culture was very strong there, but I didn't love it because it was very much looking down on everybody. It was a different way of. There was Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, and others around there that people looked down to. I didn't get that from Havana when I was there. People did not look down on us. They even knew that we were Mexicans or something. They couldn't quite get that Edith was full Salvadorian, but they could almost spot us. These are Mexicans, and they were very open and they were very beautiful about it. It wasn't a big problem. So I just feel like the celebration of life and culture was powerful, and I wanted just to bring that up to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that has kept me returning is, ironically, this might sound a little odd, but I feel very proud to be Mexican when I am in Cuba. I feel recognized as a Chicano. I feel very proud to be Mexican. And I feel this way because of the experiences that I've had over the years with folks over at Casa de las Americas, of course, but then folks out in the community, or folks in the libraries, folks in the restaurant, folks at the other cultural spaces that I've gone to, the museums, people with whom I've interacted are very curious and sincerely interested in knowing about Mexican people generally, and especially, it's been my experience anyway, knowing and learning about Chicanos and Chicanas in the United States. It explains, of course, the presence, the history, and the significance of the program for the study of Latinos in the United States. If that's, if that interest wasn't there, there wouldn't be such a welcoming space such as that. I'd like to ask you a second question now, and this question concerns your work over the last year. And at this point, I'll begin with Edith, and I'll ask you, Edith, and I'll ask everybody the same question. How did your attendance at the conference, at the colloquium, for the span of a week, more or less, you presented to an international audience, you shared your poetry, you addressed your own poetry, you received questions about your poetry and about your work in the community. How has that borne on your interpretation over the last year? And I'm talking about your poetic vision, without talking about your poetry in particular. Your poetic vision. How has your poetic vision been touched by that participation?
I could say that I came back with a wider perspective. I think before Cuba, I always saw myself as an alley poet, like a very local poet. Even though I've traveled within California and Tijuana, there was still that mentality of writing about my experiences as first generation in Los Angeles.
Yes.
After being in Casa de las Americas and presenting to this national audience and connecting with professores from New York, and the East Coast, and the people of Casa Americas themselves, it widened that perspective for me. It gave me like another lens of where my work could go, what audiences it might speak to, and not just from the perspective of this like girl from East LA, touching a little bit too on what you said about like us being perceived as Mexicans over there. I know U.S. especially now, we're probably better off with our Mexican passport, you know, because,
You're coming in and out. I'm losing you a little bit.
So, you know, because Mexico's politics with Cuba have always been very friendly. It almost just makes it natural for that interaction to happen. Like we all said, we felt at home there. And so, yeah, just giving me that perspective of wanting to have my work represent like a wider connection. You know, my ancestors have always been part of the writing, but definitely being in an international space somewhere outside of the Southwest is influencing my newer work. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Edith. Viva, your poetic and literary vision, you know, I don't know if I mentioned this at the outset of our talk this morning or this afternoon. In addition to the other folks that are, you know, on this panel today concerning our trip, you publish material. You know, you're also an editor. So you have a not just like everybody else. You know, it's not just a poetic vision that might have been touched by your work last year in La Habana, Cuba, but maybe your literary vision more generally. How has, if not your poetic vision, your literary vision, how has it been touched by attendance in Cuba?
It's definitely expanded my realm of possibility. I've been doing this journal for 5 years, and I've always kind of been like, can you hear me?
Yes, the name of the journal.
Oh,
the name of the journal.
See, Dryland.
Dryland.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 5 years, and you know, I've just kind of seen myself kind of develop the journal over the years. But after I left Cuba, I was kind of feeling like, you know, I don't need to succumb to the way that things are in the United States and in the way that the literary institutions are here in the United States, because there's so much here that I'm fighting against. You know, I don't have an MFA, so I have to kind of do things like unconventionally. And after coming back from Cuba, I was like, I kind of felt more solidarity. And I felt more solidarity there with what I was trying to do with my literary stuff than I have felt over here. I feel like people understood what I was doing over there. And over here, I always kind of have to explain it or kind of sell it.
Yeah.
And I kind of reached a point where I'm like, I don't need to sell this. There's no selling here anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't need to convince anybody. If somebody understands the work, they're gonna understand it. And those are the people that I want to reach. So that really informed this issue where I have this like philosophy where like I'm arm in arm with the readers. I'm arm in arm with the audience. I'm not above them. No one is above them. As an editor, I'm not like above my writers. I'm not above the poets. I'm not above the artists. We're all in this together, you know, like we're all in solidarity with this, with what we're trying to do. And so I really felt that kind of connection with Cuba and with Casa de las Americas and everybody that we met there. So it kind of just expanded my realm of possibility where I was just like, I don't need to think of myself as, you know, U.S., you know, literary journal. I can be, you know, the journal can transcend anything that our country over here is putting us under. So I kind of felt like I can. Sorry, your typing is kind of distracting me a bit. Sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, pero what was I saying? No, pero
you feel that you're not necessarily wedded to the United States as a
yes.
literary worker. Yeah, at
Right,
least that's
right,
how
right.
you're saying.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I've kind of abandoned that. I'm kind of just like, I don't even
Yeah.
think about it like that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of free to move through the planet. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Wonderful. Luis, how has as I understand, if I remember correctly, this trip to La Habana constitutes the first time that you were there. And of course, you're not new to progressive. You're not new to the progressive and radical tradition, to the progressive and radical Latin American tradition in politics and in culture and in the arts. I'm curious to know what impact, what perspective might now have been coupled to your own perspective, to your own life experiences, to your poetic imagination, to your literary imagination, as a consequence of this particular trip.
Right. Well, it's funny because in
So
Cuba, I experienced.
Hey, the question was for Luis. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't. Oh, okay, you didn't specify. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm going around.
For me,
Okay.
it's really powerful because I've been able to go to places like Nicaragua in the 80s when I was studying briefly with Ernesto Cardenal, who passed. And I was able to go to Uchitan, Mexico, when they had the uprising. And my poetry and all of that was developing. I was able to go to Europe and Germany when I did the slam poetry tour the first time in Europe in 1993. And I've been able to go to Japan and other countries, Argentina and Guatemala and Honduras. So what I have learned in all those experiences is how vital Chicano poetry is in the world, but also how expansive it can be. Because I think what we have to say really resonates with poor people, with people who are being pushed down, discriminated, and knocked around. So when I speak from that perspective, almost every one of these people understand it. And this was very true in Havana. When we did our poetry, whether we did it in Spanish or English, they got it. We spoke to the things that they understood. You know what I'm saying? We're not speaking about things that it doesn't matter. We're talking about very real, objective conditions that we live under in our barrios in Los Angeles, in the United States. And I think we're speaking it from not just poetic terms, but also political terms. And that to me is what they can really understand. I heard from others, and I don't want to put down anybody else's panel, but I heard from others that we were one of the best panels in the whole thing. So I don't mind saying that because I think we came prepared, we came ready, our poetry was strong, our words were strong, and we represented that LA barrio experience, which I think it's kind of world renowned. You might not get it in popular culture, they don't get it, but as far as the world goes, they get it. Our people, our gente, Chicano, Central America, whatever it might be, we've developed a way of speaking and struggling and also expressing the oppressions, but also the pain, but also the liberations that we need to do.
Yeah. All right. And then to close this particular question, again, I'm going counterclockwise here on my computer screen, and I'll close the question with you, Matt. Your perspective, your poetic perspective, your literary perspective, how has it been touched, impacted, influenced over the year?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to give a shout out to John Cantu, who actually has done a lot of work with Luis over the years, but he worked with us on this project, and so we made a short film. So our presentation in Havana was a short film of the work we were doing here in LA. So I thought that was a really big thing that we were able to do, was take the work that we've done in LA and show it to people. And so that speaks a lot to this kind of this dialogue that we've been discussing this whole time. But John Cantu played a big part of that, as well as Mateo Latosa helped us produce soundtrack with an international thing. We'll talk more about that. So I want to really shout that out. And we were the best presentation for the whole colloquium until those damn San Jorocho. Like,
there must have been I don't know. I can't count people, but it must have been 500 people that were dancing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't,
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was intense.
That was so, but until that, I think we had the one. So I learned from that. Okay, next time we got to pop out of the audience and we full floor show. No, but it was an incredible experience. It was an incredible experience.
Your vision since then,
And
you know, your
since then has really just expanded. That, like, you know, this is not a question of, I'll touch on some of what Viva was talking about. This is not just a question of existing in like this kind of American market's the wrong word, just American like intellectual landscape, but like no, like to exist in the world and to and really to you know, to the possibility of existing in the world, the possibility of that one can do that, and not just that one can do that, but I can do that, you know, or the door is open. That's possible, and so that's kind of expanded my vision as to what I personally can do with my work, and what, you know, I would encourage other people to do with their work is to try and think about things in terms of a global landscape, and not just, you know, not just be locked into ideas that like, okay, well, I'll be big in LA, or I'll be big in California, or I'll be big on the West Coast, or damn, I could take this across the whole country. No, you can take it around the whole world, you know, beam it in for time and perpetuity, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, Casa de las Americas is just that kind of place. You know, it is fueled by the spirit and the philosophy of the leader of the Cuban Revolution, the father, I should say, of the Cuban Revolution, Jose Marti, right? Whose very famous and important poem, Nuestra America, Our America, has been a kind of beacon for the revolution and the triumph of the revolution, of course, in 1959, under the leadership of Fidel Castro and you know, the vanguard of the Cuban Revolution at the time. And of course, you know, it wasn't just the vanguard of the Cuban Revolution that was participating in the transformation of Cuban society, but certainly, certainly that's my pet dog back there interrupting. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, back to what I wanted to underscore about what. Back to what I wanted to underscore about what Matt is mentioning, that really there's an opportunity to not just address the concept of internationalism as kind of an abstraction, but being at Casa de las Americas, you know, the hub, the cultural hub par excellence of Nuestra America, gives us an opportunity to link with our brothers and sisters from across the continent. You know, we were interacting closely and directly with folks from El Salvador, with folks from Argentina, with folks from Venezuela, with folks from Nueva York. You know, we were interacting closely. So it's certainly that kind of place. You know, at one point I remember, you know, there must have been a sizable proportion of folks from the East Coast of the United States there at the conference, and I shared with folks that if they knew who P.D. Thomas was, and Luis will probably remember this, you know, as I was introducing folks on the panel, I said, Luis Rodriguez is our P.D. Thomas, you know, and they got it. They understood the significance and the significance and the importance of folks like Luis Rodriguez, you know, for us here in the city of LA. You know, so that was there's this opportunity to connect as Americanos, as Nuestra Americanos, you know, as the sons and daughters of Abya Yala, you know, the sons and daughters of the people of America, to use the name America, and it's on that basis, shared objective conditions that we have with folks. Of course, they're not all entirely the same, but experiences of exclusion, of exploitation, of marginalization, of being made to feel and being treated as if our cultural production is secondary to something. And as Viva was mentioning just a few moments ago, that's not the vibe that one gets when one is communicating and addressing, the significance and the importance of Chicana and Chicano art, or Salvadoran art, or South American art, or of New Yorican art. It's not that. It's we're together there. We're together there at Nuestra America, en Casa de las Americas. Any closing thoughts? We'll begin with Iris. Closing thoughts as we wrap up our talk. And, take a few moments to share some closing thoughts.
Or Luis.
I'm sorry. Did I say I'm going in counterclockwise? So I finished with Matt, I believe. Yeah. And so now we'll finish with Iris. I'm sorry. We'll begin with Iris. Yes. I'm sorry, Iris. Your closing thoughts?
I'm just grateful for you guys to have gathered us a year later and just to have that energy again with the four of you. It was a life-altering experience. I hope to be back to Cuba one day, and El Profe Prado, that invitation, or the fact that my work was able to find a little place in those halls. Yeah. Like walking into Casa de las Americas was very surreal, and I feel like I brought back some of that magic. And so just grateful for the experience, grateful that I got to share it with you guys, and hoping, to see what's going to come. I know everybody's working on different projects. Everyone's moving forward. A lot of more energy and things. And so I'm very excited for 2021. And how lucky to go to Cuba before we had to lock down. So
I know, we were so lucky. We were so lucky. Yes. Thank you so much, Iris. Viva, some closing words.
Thank you, Prado, for bringing us together. It's great to see you guys, even though we're not together in real life. Okay. I would love to go back to Cuba, and I'm happy to say that I will be joining them on some virtual things this year, so look out for that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. I love that we went together as a group, and that we shook things up at the conference. I enjoyed all that. The biggest thing I took away from all of it, though, was really like just valuing people's expression a little bit more now. I definitely feel like I wish someday we could have an underground book economy where we're all making books, where people where we finally demystify bookmaking, and who gets to be, who gets to have a book and who gets to be documented. I really hope that my work shines through that, bringing this kind of thing to the world. I know it's a lot I'm undertaking, but I'm very dedicated to it, and I feel like Cuba really added to that strength within me. So I'm happy to see you guys. I know everybody's doing great things. Just excited to do more, and so
wonderful. Luis,
well, let me just say, I saw the debates, as the so-called debates, and last night with Harris and Pence. But here's one thing I would say. Everybody there is limited in their thinking. They have no imagination. It's either climate change or jobs. It's either racial justice or more police. They limit everything. What I loved about Cuba, and I have to say Havana, it stretched your imagination of what's possible. it made me realize that we don't have to accept the limitations of capitalism, of the people running this country who are all limited. That we were ourselves, even with our poverty, are wealthy in capacity, wealthy in dreams, wealthy in just like Viva says, we can make our own books, we can make our own way. We don't need to have all these people getting in our way. It's like everybody's saying, take your foot off my neck. Let me do it myself, ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's do it community-wise. And I learned that from being in Havana, because I think that's the message that Cuba's giving the world. We're going to do it our way. We don't have to do it in the imperialist capitalist paradigm. So anyway, I just want to say thank you all, Prado, for being the great host. All of you were great. We didn't argue one time. Can you imagine? You say Chicanos can't hang around for 1 hour without arguing. We were having a great time. And Matt, I want to thank you for organizing this and inviting me. And Edith and Viva, you guys were the best. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's
Closing thoughts on this would be, I mean, I really, what can I add to what Luis had to say? I mean, it's absolutely true. We have to have a vision of a better world. It's not just enough to know that what's wrong with the world we live in, but have to have a vision for the world that we would wish to live in, right? And then try and find our steps there, reverse engineer that process. But I really want to say, for myself personally, that it was a really incredible trip. I thank you, Jose, for initiating it and for leading the charge. Yudis and Viva, it's been really great. It's really been great to have you as contemporaries, as people that I've been working alongside, coming up with over the past decade or so. To watch both of you, really build a name and a career and a legacy, as I do the same. And so it's been really great to have these contemporaries. And Luis, you've always been really there for me in like some really key moments, and we could go months without speaking, or like not for any bad reasons, just because everyone's busy, but you show up in my life at very particular moments, and we're able to come together and work on some really major things together, and you've been nothing but a hand up and an inspiration, and a shoulder to lean on, and you've always done your part to lift up others as you yourself, as your legend grows. So because I know that you're not anywhere near retirement, right? You don't retire, you retire. I remember hearing that. So it's been a real honor to work with you, and I'm still flabbergasted some of the opportunities I've had to work with you. So I really appreciate you and all you do, not just as the writer Luis Rodriguez, but also as the mentor and just supporter of the arts that you've been all these years. So Cuba was an amazing trip, and it was amazing to share with all of you.
It was certainly phenomenal. It was great. It was a very enjoyable, very fruitful, and very eye-opening and awakening experience. I can't say enough positive things about it. I want to thank you, of course, Matt, for suggesting that we do this 1 year wrap-up. I'm so caught up in my work at the university and other projects in which I'm involved that, without your suggestion, without your intervention, I wouldn't have thought about doing this. So I also want to thank very much, of course, Iris de Anda, Viva Padilla, Luis Rodriguez, and John Cantu, Mateo Latosa, for participating in this in the production over leading up to our trip last year, and of course things that we've done since. Special shout out, as they say, to Ana Nidia Albo, who is the La Investigadora. It's kind of difficult for me to translate her title to English, but really she's the contact person over at the Program for the Study of Latinos in the United States, and of course the director, the Professor Antonio Aja from the University of La Habana, who is the director of the Center for the Study of Demography over there at the university. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the audience. Like us on Facebook, as they say, spread the word. And just to close, last thing is the 6th colloquium of the program for the study of Latinos in the United States is coming up. And once the dates of the event are confirmed, I'll make sure to let the world know. And thank you all. Thank you one and all.
Gracias.
Adiós.
Gracias.
Los quiero mucho. Los quiero mucho.
Hasta
Abrazo.
luego.
Hasta
Thank you
luego.
so much.
So,
Sí, al contrario, gracias.